Sometimes when you're driving down the road all by yourself, you begin to hear a voice that tells you need to look around, pay attention. Maybe something isn't quite right. That voice is me. It's the voice of Gord. Well, g'day everybody. Happy New Year 2024. Welcome back to another installment of the Voice of Gord podcast. Yeah, this show has been out for a year now. I started releasing episodes in January of 2023, so yeah, I think we're up to 52, 53 episodes now, so been managing one a week for you guys. Thanks for listening. Thanks for being here. Thanks for sharing it, passing it around. Enjoying what I have to bring you while you go down the road. Yeah, my first episode of 2024. Very good friend of mine, somebody you may have bumped into out on the road or maybe online. His name is Chris Thomas, aka the Indietrucker. A real Kentucky gentleman, a man full of wisdom and positive energy. Real good guy to hang out with and be around. He's been to my place a few times. We went to Matt's together. Just a nice dude, and I've been a guest at his home on the Ridge, as he calls it, near Moorhead, Kentucky. Chris is a lovely guy. We had a nice long chat, and I hope you guys enjoy it. Looking down the road, further into 2024, I've got a few writing projects coming up that you can keep track of on my Substack, autonomoustruckers.substack.com. If you're not subscribed there already, head on over. You'll get this podcast and all of my writing work delivered directly to your inbox. I've been commissioned to write a series of essays for a think tank down in DC on various issues with the trucking industry. I think you guys might find those useful. I'm also going to continue writing in defense of some people in Canada who are being unjustly attacked by the government of Justin Trudeau. If you want to hear more about that situation, I recently published a fairly lengthy essay on my Substack called The Lawfare Archipelago. I highly recommend that you go and check that out. While we're here, I want to say g'day and Happy New Year to all my listeners down under. As you know, this show is syndicated on the Australian On the Road Radio online truckers network for road train drivers all across the Outback. G'day guys. I keep meaning to have Yogi and Mike from that network on the show here. We're going to get that lined up, I promise you. It's coming. Well, as always, I appreciate you guys listening. If you have any feedback, send it to gordilocks@protonmail.com. My email is always in the show notes. This show is still free, and all that I ask is you guys pass it around, share it, let your friends know, especially if they're truck drivers. Word of mouth is the best marketing. And it's all that I can afford. All right, enough of all that nonsense. Let's get to a real Kentucky gentleman, Mr. Chris Thomas. All right, g'day everybody. Welcome to another episode of Voice of Gord. I'm Gord, and this is my voice. The other voice you're about to hear today is a real Kentucky gentleman, probably one of the best owner-operators in the business, drives a dirty old Freightliner up and down all the highways and byways of America, and has lots of wisdom to share with you. Would you please welcome to the show, Chris Thomas, a.k.a. the Indietrucker.
Hello, everybody. Hello, Gord. How are you doing today?
I'm fantastic. Woke up a little early. I've got my dad's curse now. It's Sunday, and I woke up at 4:30 in the morning for no apparent reason.
Oh yeah, that's something we all do as we get a little bit older. Is getting up at all kinds of odd hours for odd reasons, right?
Yeah, well, I'm gonna be 45 here in February, so I guess yes, I am getting old.
Yeah. Well, that's the part of living. That's a good part of living, right? I feel like when you make it past 40, you're doing pretty good. That's something that's worth striving for is you get a little bit of wisdom behind you and look back and appreciate things a little bit more.
Yes, sir. Are you even 40 yet?
Oh, I'll be 42 in May.
Right. I knew you were a
Yeah.
little younger than me, but I wasn't sure how much.
Yeah, not too awfully much. I'm just out here this morning. Woke up. We're at Saps Brothers out here in York, Nebraska. That's the life of the over the road trucker. You're here and there. Yesterday morning I was at Walcott, Iowa. Morning before that, DeMott, Indiana. It's one of those things that the trucking. You're just always moving, always somewhere else.
And for those who don't know, amongst my audience, Walcott, Iowa is the location of an extremely famous place in the pantheon of American trucking.
It absolutely is. That's the home of the world's largest truck stop, the Iowa 80. And of course, yesterday I had to take some time and go explore the museum. It's something that's been on my bucket list, and I'm always usually seems like every time I stop at that truck stop, I'm always on the move. So I'm always getting up and going, no time to waste. And yesterday I was like, you know what? I want to see some old trucks, and that's a great place to go and check out some old iron. I mean, there's everything from 1910 in there, it looks like something's drawn by horses, but it's actually got a motor and everything in it. There's Federals in there, there's Max, there's Peterbilts, there's just every kind of old truck that you can imagine in there. And one of the big highlights of me stopping there was getting to see Hank's Highway Hilton. And now, are you familiar with Hank's Highway Hilton?
I am not. Fill us in. I've never been to this. I've been to Iowa 80 a bunch over the years, but I much like yourself, come and go and schedule. I never took the time to go into the museum, and I suppose I should one of these days.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's a fantastic experience. So, Hank Good is an American legend of a trucker, right? There's so many out here, but he's one that I've followed along for years. And he had this old 1981 Kenworth cab over that he put 1.7 million miles on, and he bought it, And the it's quite a sight to see. It's delightfully tacky, if you will, almost gaudy. He's got so much on that truck and pinstriping and logos and stickers from all of his adventures and journeys. And he drove all over the United States as an independent trucker in the 1980s, 1990s. Had the truck shipped to Europe, and he took the truck on several tours of Europe, down the autobahn, all over the country. I mean, he was kind of an international superstar of trucking, and he's still out here as far as I know. At least the last time I checked. I really need to follow up on that. But currently, he drives from ICX, which is a company owned by Mike Gully out of Quincy, Illinois, and that's a whole nother wormhole there of a trucking legend right there, Mike Gully and his fleet, Gully Transport.
Right. So this Hank fella, 1981 Kenworth, eh? Cab over.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I my first highway tractor was a cab over Kenworth. The guys I worked for in Canada were sort of famous for having really beautiful black and red and gold cab over Kenworths, and that was sort of their thing for a couple decades. What was this fellow's name? Hank what?
Hank Good. On the door it says Henry Good, but yeah, Hank Henry or Henry, or I guess short Hank Good. And his signature at all the trucks he's ever driven, the ones he's owned and the current one he currently drives, is he has his initials HG lit up on the grill of his truck. So for years I'd drive around, and the first time I seen it, he had his red Kenworth. I believe it was Hank 2 or Hank 3. I think it was Hank 2 though. And he had that truck. And then the last time I seen him, he was sleeping, and or else I missed him. He was parked in a truck stop up in Ohio there. And I really have never got to meet the man, but I follow him along on Facebook, and I've hollered at him and he's hollered back on the CB before. It's kind of a nice thing to do out here.
I think that story of that putting a fixture on the grill, the HG, the lit up HG.
Yeah.
Fast forward a couple of decades to the internet generation, and put a GM on it, not just for my initials, but good morning, just GM, 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 all the way down the highway.
Oh, wouldn't that be something? Can you imagine that?
Yes, sir. Wow. So, what else is on offer at the Iowa 80 Truck Stop Truck Museum?
Yeah, as far as you just go in there and you can kind of see the whole trajectory of how trucking evolved, right? You can see the old day cabs, you can see how they changed after different periods in our time. You can see the progression of motors. You can honestly see how motors hadn't really changed all that much up until recently. From all the way back in the 1950s, it was a very simple platform. Obviously they got more efficient and you didn't a little bit more longevity as components and technology improved. But you can see the different style of sleepers and how sleeper cabs developed. One of the cool things that caught my eye was this cab over truck, and it was hooked to a set of double livestock trailers, and the cab over had a sleeper above the driver and passenger seat. So the sleeper was at the very top of the cab over, and looking up through there, you could see the driver would get over the doghouse, which if you don't know, a doghouse is a standard feature in cab over because that's where the engine's at, is underneath the doghouse. So you crawl over the doghouse, crawl up in the top of the truck, and there you go to sleep. So it was very interesting and to get to go and see that. And just read some of the stories about all of these owner operators, and that's and different truckers. And anytime that you spend any time in the industry, and you kind of become more of a you belong to it more and more the more time that you get in here. You get a great appreciation for all the other men and women who walk the same journey.
Yeah, many such cases. That reminds me. First off, those sleeping above the seat cab overs are fairly common in Europe. I think that's probably where that design actually came from. And then as far as a museum and sort of honoring, all these men and women that have done the journey, it reminds me there's this truck stop in Australia. If you're going up the Stuart Highway, which goes right up through the guts, the center of the country, north south, goes from Adelaide to Port Augusta, Cooper Pedy, Alice Springs, and on all the way up to Darwin. And there's north of Alice Springs, there's this little town called Three Ways, which is where you can turn right and then go into central Queensland and then on down to Brisbane and Cairns and all that. And there's a big old shell roadhouse there. And in that roadhouse, I mean, it's an outback Australia truck stop, right? I mean, there's not that much to it, but they've got this one great big room, and on all of the walls, it's all photos of drivers and historical pictures of all the road trains going up and down that road since time immemorial. But it's like a tribute to all the guys that sort of built the Northern Territory, because back in the day, the rail line that goes north south, sort of roughly following that highway, ended in Alice Springs, and they had to take everything off the train that was going to Darwin and put it on road trains. So there was just like way more truck traffic back in the 50s and 60s and 70s. And you got to remember, this is Australia, a place that's like that part of Australia is the red center. It's desert outback, and it's hot. And back in the day, man, your sort of modern conveniences were harder to come by, like air conditioning and, places to order food and get something to eat. Those guys were cooking on the side of the road. If it wasn't 130 degrees out, and changing their own tires, and just a totally different ball game than over here. And like I say, this roadhouse at Three Ways has a sort of homage to all of its customers and all these guys that kept the economy of the Northern Territory going over, the last 6 decades.
Yeah, I want to touch on, you're talking about modern conveniences, and that's a good time to go over to the modern conveniences. But before we do, I just want to give a shout out to our friend Mike Lombard. And there's a great patch collection there from all trucking companies over the years. So naturally I went in there and I was like, oh, we gotta see if the legend is in here. And there were actually I think there were five Lombard trucking patches already there in it. And Mike, I'm not sure that Mike knew that was a thing, but sure enough, one of them was even donated by our Lombard. So, pretty cool to see one of our friends over there and his company's or his family's trucking legacy already there. But, as far as modern conveniences go, Iowa 80, you know, everything is there, right? Like they have the barber shop, they have a dentist, they have a theater, they have 20 or 30 showers. I can't remember. They have a fitness room. They have multiple restaurants. They have a humongous gift shop. They have a humongous chrome shop. They have a truck wash. They have truck maintenance bays. They have a place to wash your dog. They have, of course, the museum. They have over 1,000 parking spots. Now, a lot of guys complain about the prices. They're like, oh, but I can get it cheaper online. I can get cheaper here and there. Well, yeah, sure you can. But Iowa 80 is providing a trucker a great place to take a rest, a fantastic place.
Yeah, that chrome shop there is like, it's almost the size of a Home Depot, man. It's deadly. You can spend a lot of money in that joint.
Oh, absolutely, you can, and it's a fun place to go and see all this stuff. And I'm sure I'm not telling any of the truckers new things, but Iowa 80 Group, they own several truck stops: Kenly, Joplin, Missouri, Oak Grove. I'm not sure that's one off the top of my head there, but and they also own Catscale. I mean, they're the parent company that owns the Catscales. So they go around and make sure that we can all have an opportunity to get weighed, so we don't have, as you say, imperial entanglements. But it's a very good place to go and spend some time. I spent some money there yesterday. That's not usually something I do, but I needed a few things and wanted to get a few things knocked out before the end of the year. And as any good owner operator knows, this is the time for tax planning.
Yeah. Well, it's funny you mentioned that you spent some money there, because when I first bumped into you online several years ago, one of the little taglines you had on your Twitter account said, "Chrome don't get you home."
Yeah, that's absolutely true. Chrome don't get you home. So I didn't buy a whole lot of chrome. I bought a Pittsburgh Power oil trap because I'm getting tired of all the blow by oil getting all over everything under my truck and making it a mess. And
That's rust prevention, bro.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's also, when you deal with picky customers, they don't even like it dripping on the concrete anymore. It's kind of amazing where we're getting to as a society, but absolutely. But keep the truck clean, get under there, grease it. You can do rust prevention other ways, unfortunately, and and keep in compliance with the DOT, right?
Yeah, the Imperials are a pain in the butt, which is why I always try and avoid them. Yeah, you have a fairly long history in the trucking business. You've been an owner operator for how long now?
I guess the first truck that I bought on my own was 2009, and 2 years previous to that, I was basically doing a 1099 lease purchase through a couple who had a rather large specialized fleet within FedEx Custom Critical. So then I started in 2005. So yeah, I'm 18 working on 19 years next year.
Wow, it's fairly impressive given the sort of churn and washout problems we have with so many people that get into the business kind of as a second or third or fourth or final career, as it were. Because you didn't start out in trucking, you used to drive an ambulance or something, didn't you?
Yeah, so that was my first career path there. I grew up around the volunteer fire department. Probably way younger than I should have been allowed to, but it was kind of the precursor for a lot of the rules and regulations. Growing up in that era. So about 14 years old, I started hanging around. By the time I turned 18, I already had 700-800 hours of classroom training on how to deal with a variety of emergency situations. And I kept on that path. I got my EMT basic license and worked in ambulance for a few years, and then switched over to become a 911 dispatcher. And my last job before I got in the truck, I had many jobs actually. I had about 4 or 5 at the same time, but the main job was being a 911 dispatcher at Cincinnati, Northern Kentucky International Airport for almost 2 years.
Right. And this is probably where you learned how to be such a calm speaker and put everybody at rest and at ease and, comfortable.
I don't know about that.
Or is that
You
that
know,
just that just is that just part of your blood being from Eastern Kentucky?
you know, honestly, I'm a quiet guy. I always have been. Kind of sit back
What?
and just, yeah, believe it or not, I sit back and most of my life I just sit and listen. And I'm going to say that my speaking skills probably come from visiting the bars for the last 20 years and getting a little bit loosened up and enjoying a good story. And somewhere along the way, you listen to enough stories, and sometimes you might even start being able to tell a few of your own.
Yeah, and that's why you're here, because you have some.
Yeah, so I guess there we go back to FedEx Custom Critical and my time there. I guess we could go back a little bit further. I got trained at Schneider, and I got trained at a time when I feel like that Schneider National had a really good training program. Honestly, my experience, my first year at Schneider was actually overall positive, but being a young guy and having maybe a short fuse on some issues, I didn't put up with the whole lot. And second or third shift would come in every day or several days a week, and I'd have the plan down from earlier the day with our dispatch. And as soon as they'd come in and often change the circumstances or push a little bit harder than I feel like they should be. I was already going as hard as I could, let's push a little harder. And then so ended up leaving there, because of that, because it was kind of disappointing to get that first year excellent service badge. And that's what we got. That's what I had. I had the first year that Schneider had these jackets, and if you walk into an operating center, you'd see these old guys in there with years of service and all the excellent service badges. So I got all that in my first year, but I never felt like that because third shift would call you up and say, "Hey, why aren't you moving hard enough? Why aren't you moving fast enough?" Right? So it was like one little thing there, and it was that one little pebble there that kind of made me slide on into another career. And we went to Interstate Distributor. I didn't mention this, but anybody that doesn't already know, I got into trucking because of my ex-wife. So I done team trucking for about 4 years. So we went to Interstate Distributor. That was a great experience working there. I got really familiar with getting over the mountains and chaining up and all that stuff because they were out of Tacoma, Washington.
When you say interstate, you mean like the battery company, or is this just
Well,
like a different? This is just a name.
yeah, Interstate Distributor Company was a company based out of Tacoma, Washington, and they were a fairly moderate sized fleet at the time. I'm not sure. I couldn't tell you the number of trucks they had for sure. I'm going to say somewhere between 800 and 1,500 trucks. Now they got absorbed up, bought out by Heartland Express some time ago, at least 10 years ago. But we were there, and then we went and loaded slot machines. I remember this one. We went and loaded slot machines at a place in Vegas to come back out east. And while we were there on the dock, had a chance meeting, run into a couple from FedEx Custom Critical that was running freight, and they were asking how much we were making. And I didn't know at the time that's kind of like a taboo subject on the docks. You don't talk about how much you're making unless you want somebody else to call up and try to get that load from you, right? But it was a chance encounter, and when they showed me they were making to them 5 times the amount that I was hooked, right? The whole wheel started turning, and I had the curtain, as it were, pulled back from the scene, and I could see how much money was there, and I started counting and figuring out that, hey, I could do that. I can own a truck. I can go out and do that. So went to FedEx Custom Critical and spent 2.5 years there until the recession. The recession kind of ate up everybody, including the rich people and the expedited freight and the specialized kind of freight like we were hauling, which was artwork and computers and museum pieces and all this stuff. But that was kind of,
That's the big recession of 08, 09.
yeah, the big recession of 08, 09. It was no joke. It felt like in 08, I know that now, I was told this. I don't have verification, but I believe it. We were one of the top 10 trucks for gross revenue in FedEx's entire fleet. I'm talking, I know, I believe if I'd done the math right at the time, it was close to $700,000 was FedEx's revenue off that one truck. And we were hustling. I mean, we were doing, a lot, but it really kicked off in 2009, and there was some unfortunate circumstances there. But I'm grateful and appreciative of that time in my life because I got to haul some of the coolest stuff, got to have some of the greatest experiences, and it really formulated how I treat every load. I treat every load like it's a Picasso back there, right? Like it's the most important thing, and that's what all truckers should be doing every day. It's hard sometimes to feel that way when you got a load of cardboard back there, maybe, or scrap. But
Well, it's
sure.
not just the importance of the load itself. It's just the sort of that's a representation of the seriousness with which you take your job, right? Because every mile on the road is risk. Every mile on the road is potential for something bad to happen, and you just always got to be mindful and having that attitude that yeah, I'm carrying Picassos behind me. That'll serve you well.
Oh, absolutely. And I guess there's a lot of things that go into making every trucker a little bit different, right? But we're all individuals out here, and I've met so many great individuals over the years. I've met retired bankers. I've met retired rocket scientists that drive a truck. I've, met single moms, divorced people, people from all walks of life, people from Ethiopia who moved over here because farming wasn't doing it over in Ethiopia, but they moved over here and they have a fleet of 10 trucks, right? And it's a great industry to be in, and get so much out of it. And you give back, you got to be a professional. And that's just from day one. It was beat into me by the trainers at Schneider that, this is a professional job. Didn't matter what you done out there, anything that happened out there on the road. If you were on the side of the road involved in an accident, you had to remember one thing: you were the professional. You were the one making all this. You're the one getting paid to be out there. That's your workplace. So, you know, a lot of that stuff has just stuck with me over the years now. And it's followed me into owning a truck and being leased with Autumn Transport pretty much since 2010. I did leave Autumn for about 2.5 months. I really wanted to pull RGN freight, and I got my taste for it. I really enjoyed it, enjoyed the hell out of it. But it didn't pay the bills like Autumn did. So we went back to Autumn, and or I did after, because in 2009 I was a single man again. So I was back out to solo opera, as my first experience in solo operating, I would say, and been here ever since.
Right. Gooseneck work, depending on who you work for, it can be sort of feast or famine. There'll be lots of it, or there won't be that much. And also a lot of empty miles in between gigs. And I mean, I did a lot of that. I quite enjoyed it, especially if you're doing like heavy equipment, drive it on, drive it off yourself, be self contained. But with Autumn, you're hauling a lot of food grade, which means there's always work.
Yeah, yeah. So it's a lot of the base ingredients for not only food but feed and some other, stuff like that. Nothing's hazardous, but it's a lot of minerals, a lot of grain products, a lot of salt, different farm products. It's nice because it gives me a good variety of locations to be in. I'm not always, well, I haven't bumped a dock since 2009. So, or early 2010, actually, I bumped the dock. Haven't bumped the dock since, and it's kind of great. I'm responsible for unloading the trailer. There's just more to it than just driving. And I think even when I was at FedEx, there was more to just at FedEx than just driving, right? It was responsibility to make sure the loads were secured properly. Had a lift gate on that trailer, so I got pretty good with using a lift gate. And I think for me, having that ability to get outside of the truck and do something is something that's made me stay with the industry. And that's a very important thing. So many guys get into it, they get in a truck and they think it's just get here, drop the trailer, sit in my truck until somebody tells me something to do. That could be a mindless grog after a while.
Oh, yeah. Speaking of grog, you're often delivering to breweries.
Oh yeah, yeah. That's one of my favorite things to do is take a good load of malt into a brewery, and once in a while get the time to come back to that brewery later and enjoy the products that they're making.
I
And I've
remember
got
you. I
quite a
remember
few
you.
across the country.
I remember you telling me once. So you have some kind of PTO driven blower on your tractor, which sort of blows all the product out of the trailer using air pressure, correct?
That's correct. So pneumatic trailers, and that's actually a pneumatic trailer. We call it, it's called a pneumatic tank sometimes, but that's not really correct. It's a more like a hopper that's got pressure seals all over it, and I can seal everything up. And I use this blower via hot air hose hooked from the trailer to the blower output. And yeah, I engage a PTO, idle the truck up, and build up air pressure inside the tank, and I can unload product via air into a silo or into whatever the customers need me to into a train car. I could unload off of a train car. Um, there's a variety of things and a versatility to getting dry product moved around with a pneumatic trailer. That's why the specialty's real good. You don't have to have a tanker endorsement in the United States to actually operate one because it's not liquid. Once everything's in, it's kind of set in place.
Right. Now I remember as well, depending on the product, you have to adjust the pressure so you don't crush things or otherwise make them unusable for the customer.
Yeah, so you have to like some products you want to go a little bit slower with. Let's say like plastic pellets, you want to go slow so you're not overheating and melting the plastic. If you're unloading malt or any kind of grain, you might want to go slow so you're not damaging the hull. So it's just, it's usually a customer preference, whatever they decide, that's what we unload at.
You delivered to a brewery not too far from me here, and I'm hoping you get back and we'll have to drive down there and check it out because I don't think I've even been there yet.
Yeah, I think that was a brew factory, wasn't it, over there in near Binghamton? Brew tree,
Yeah,
brew tree,
beer tree.
brew tree. Yeah, brew
Beer
tree.
tree. Yeah. No, there's one in Port. They have a brew pub in Port Crane, and then they got another one over here, kind of Johnson City, Endicott way on the west side of Binghamton.
Yeah, and that's one of my hobbies. I love microbreweries. I love going in, and they're just a great atmosphere. There's just so much ideas and liveliness inside of these places, and each one has its own character. A lot of the same vibes go from one to the other, but it's a generally happy atmosphere to be in. And if you're out in the road and alone for a long time, getting in amongst the people, having a little bit of fun, that's a good little way to liven up your day.
Yeah, well, you have to find these places when you're out on the road. That's part of the adventure. It's easy to get locked into the sort of negative mindset just because of all of the sort of vagaries of the road that get in your way and being distant from your family and just all the problems that seem to pile up quite often for drivers. Yeah, if you can find a little spot like a brewery or somewhere cool that's you wouldn't typically take a truck, or you get your 34-hour reset and go have some beers or some bourbon or something somewhere and just hang out. That's aces, man.
Yeah, no, and that's I think that contributes a lot to my success out here and being able to stay sane because I've seen so many drivers get out here and they turn it into a slave factory, right? They just turn it into this factory where they're the slave, working all day, not having any fun, not having any life. They get depressed, and for whatever reason, one to the next, their next thing they're doing is basically destroying their own life from within. And you know, those drivers would probably sit and ridicule a guy like me. Well, why are you out here doing this? You should be sending that money home. Well, listen, I do send money home. I send plenty home, but I also realize that this is my life. This is my time here on this earth. I'm going to live that life. I'm going to get out, and, within reason, enjoy it. This time last year, I was catching an Uber to a Basilica in Milwaukee for a Christmas concert, and that just getting to go there and admire the work of the community puts into a place. This is the Basilica of Saint Jehoshaphat or Josaphat, and it was originally built by Polish immigrants who were living in Milwaukee there around the late 1800s, early 1900s, and it's just such an amazing venue to go in and see the all of the art in there and all of the time and labor that these artisans put into crafting this beautiful structure, and then getting to hear this choir, the bel canto chorus. This is the kind of stuff that you can do when you're an over the road truck driver. You can sit in your truck, or you can get out and you can have cultural experiences here in this beautiful country that most people, they only dream about. They go home and they watch Discovery Channel, right? They home and watch Discovery so they can see some guy like me going around living their life. Now you got to get out and live your life.
No, you got to do it yourself. Yeah. I mean, that's awesome that you got to go check out this cathedral. And, we have all these opportunities for us available now because of, make use of the apps. If you can get an Uber from the truck stop or whatever, go check stuff out on your 34 hours. There's a whole other world out there that's not the truck stop. I remember when I used to run back and forth to Yellowknife from Edmonton hauling fuel in the preseason before ice road season. We called it the pre-haul. And there's a little town, the first place you come to in the Northwest Territories, it's called Enterprise. It's like population 90. There's a gas station and a little tiny restaurant, and it's truck scale. So you come into the Northwest Territories and the DOT has a look at you. You can turn left and go to Yellowknife, or keep driving north, go to Hay River. And I used to carry my mountain bike with me on the trains, right? So I had a Super B train tanker, and I had my bicycle bungee corded to the ladder at the back of the lead trailer, and then I had a collapsible fishing rod. So I would park at Enterprise, and the highway kind of follows the sort of Slave River that goes up to Great Slave Lake, and I would climb down. I would park the truck at Enterprise, and then there was like a sort of designated fishing spot with a place you could like get down into the gorge because the river was like way down below. And I would ride my bike down, hike down into the river, and then just go fishing, just stand there. And like I'm in the Northwest Territories. I just crossed the 60th parallel 50 miles behind me, and I've got this beautiful huge river that's full of pike and trout and all the rest of it, and I'm fishing there by myself, like nobody around for hundreds of miles, just hanging out fishing, and you just have to like get out of the truck and do it.
Oh, absolutely. Some things couldn't cost you money, but there's, if you plan your trip properly every time and look at it, and just take a little bit of extra time and just kind of study a map. And I've studied maps for quite a few years. I don't need them very often, but anymore I look at the maps just to kind of see if there's anything new. Technology's kind of really, I got in here just on the cusp of this technology revolution that has hit the industry in the last 15 years.
Hit the world.
Hit the world, yeah, right. And I grew up with technology, so I'm comfortable with it. But there's so much to use there. There's a lot of good out of it. There's a lot of bad out of technology too. You can really get in there and get dragged down. But just like you say, I mean, just driving along, I can remember there's a place I love on I-15 coming out of Canada there, out of Alberta, coming into Montana there. And you park in this little truck pull-off area, and there's a little trail that takes you up to an overview of the Missouri River. And it's truly just one of these great free glories that you get to go out there and just see so much. And there's so many trails across the country. And, you do a little digging, you can find some great places to park your truck for a break or a reset and get out of the truck, get some steps in, get some nature in. And, I take advantage of every opportunity that I can like that.
There's, like you say, there's so much to see, from cathedrals to fishing to hiking to vistas, and you're getting paid to like go around and see it. Get out of the truck, go see it,
Yeah, that's often what I say, when people ask what I do for a living. It's somewhere between being I'm proud to be a trucker, but yeah, half the time I feel like I'm on a constant vacation. I mean, in all seriousness, it is a hard job, you have to definitely have a mindset about it to get out here and sit behind the wheel for hours and hours a day and deal with all sorts of weather and traffic situations and navigating people and their moods when you get to customers. But every day that I'm in this industry, I'm thankful because it's just for a guy that grew up in Eastern Kentucky and it didn't really travel much until I got into trucking. It's a different world, and I've met so many interesting people and had so many interesting experiences. And I'm young. At least that's what I get told. I'm young here at 41 years old. I still got a lot of time ahead of me. Because for instance, I was just going down I-55 there the other day, and it actually was I-57 there. I was going south of Mount Vernon, Illinois. And this old Peterbilt was coming up in the rearview mirror, and when he got up next to me, waved. And I was like, "Oh, cool, man! Somebody actually waved out here, right?" And it's a rare thing these days. So I hollered at him and had a yarn with him on the CB, and he said he would be glad to sell that truck if somebody come up with the cash. And we went down a little bit further, and he was 82 years old. He's
Wow.
82, still out here driving. Had that truck brand new from the factory, bought it in 2003. And tell you what, if I had the cash and needed a heavy haul truck, I'd have been the truck to get right there. Because a guy with that much experience in the industry is probably really taking pretty good care of that.
Yeah, and I mean 2003, so that means the fella was he would have been what, 62 years old when he bought the truck? How many
Yeah,
guys
sure.
how many guys that are 62 are going and laying out that kind of cash for a rig?
Oh, sure. Well, my neighbor Dell, he just actually he just turned 60 this month, and he just bought a Peterbilt earlier this year and a brand new triaxle heavy haul steel trailer. So it's there's something to it. Trucking's one of these weird industries where a guy gets in it and they really like it and it's a lifestyle. They don't ever want to get out of that truck. And
No, that's true.
obviously that's a struggle with everybody, even including myself. I love this job 95% of the time, maybe 90% of the time. There's sometimes though you think about getting out of the truck, and it was often I thought about it more when I was a younger man in the trucking industry. But the older I get, the more it seems like, well, I mean, it's just you kind of get used to it. It's the habits of it. You go home and you get that itch to get out and fire up that diesel and hit the road. I mean, I'm not the only one that can attest to this. There's literally tens of thousands of us, maybe hundreds of thousands out of here that absolutely love this industry. And they're the men and women who are going up and down the roads, making sure that all our stuff gets to where we can go, that you can go in, have coffee in the morning, that you can go to Walmart and get what you want, or you can order off of Amazon, whatever it is. It takes a whole slew of people to get this country moving and keep it moving. And, I'm proud to be a part of that.
Yeah, I certainly miss it. I've been off the road since July, got laid off, but I got a couple little ones here, so when they're a little bit older, I'll probably be going back out on the road. Although, there are those who seem to think we're going to be automated away by robot trucks, but I'm of two minds on that, and I like to think optimistically that 5 or 6 years down the road we'll still have guys behind the wheel.
Yeah, and who's to say what that's going to look like? I've seen a lot, and of course, like you have, and we don't know for sure what it's going to look like. It's definitely going to change, and I could see some automation coming in and kind of taking away some of these things from drivers. I really don't want to. If as long as they let me keep my old truck out here and keep it in running order, I'll keep it tip top shape and keep doing it the way I've always done it. Because to me, and just like to you, every mile that I log behind the wheel of this truck is another notch in the experience belt. So you get somebody out here and the truck's doing it, almost everything for them until that last minute, and then they're supposed to step in and take over as the safety driver. It doesn't seem like a good recipe for success.
No, I mean, at times when you're driving across Kansas or Nebraska and it's flat, and there's not much to look at. and you got the cruise control on. It's easy enough for your mind to wander, and that you have to keep that in check. Imagine when like you're doing even less, and the truck is doing more, or the computer driving the truck is doing more. Then you gotta snap out of it to take over if there's a problem. I don't know. I don't know where they're going to find the people to do that, because it certainly won't be me.
No, I mean, same thing here. I mean, if it was forced upon me, I don't see myself staying in the industry at that point because, you know, I enjoy the work. I enjoy what I do. There might come a time where there's not enough of us out here and we have to be replaced. Getting it forced upon me would definitely ensure that I go out and grow a garden in eastern Kentucky and turn off the television.
Yeah, I'm gonna get a welding machine and some torches and start building caltrops at scale. Yeah. Oh man, who knows what the future has in store. So speaking of Eastern Kentucky, I've been privileged enough to have been invited to what you call the Ridge, which is where you call home, near Moorhead, and fabulous, beautiful place. Um, fill us in a little bit more what it means to be blessed to have been born and raised in Kentucky.
Yeah, so I've spent my entire life in Kentucky, and it's been quite a blessing. Just growing up there, I live kind of over in the very eastern part of the state, which is otherwise known as the Bible Belt. It's Appalachia. It's where you officially hit Appalachia. Anything left of that's kind of more the bluegrass region of the state. And yeah, I grew up relatively poor, even though I didn't know I was poor. Mom and dad never, we never wanted, I never wanted for anything. I was the only kid. And, but, went to church a lot, had a great family, had great grandparents, there. And, it was just a good childhood. It was a good experience. I grew up playing in a creek, walked the woods, played on the cliffs. Um, and it was just a great place, to grow up. In my opinion, I'm proud that the boys have got to grow up there too, and it's changing like everywhere else. Everything else is kind of morphing into this. To steal your phrase again, this homogenization of everything, of globalization, and we still have some of our cultural identity there, but it's not as weird, I guess, there to an outsider as it might have been once upon a time. But I think there's still a lot of people there who do it and do it right. And there's a hospitality thing and this kindness, I think, that comes from being in a Kentucky person and just showing this warmth to others. It's the same way that I've been treated my entire life, and I really appreciate that. There's a quote by Irvin Cobb. He was a newspaper publisher, and it's like, to be born in Kentucky is a heritage, to brag about it is a habit, and to appreciate it is a virtue. And I've got that in my one of my actually my dining room. It's up on the wall, and that is really a thing. I do brag about Kentucky and the greatness of it, the greatness of the beauty, the greatness of the people there, and it probably speaks to much of my character as anything else. Kentuckians know hard times, and they've always just worked together to get through whatever it is.
Right. There's certainly no poverty of spirit exuding from yourself, sir.
Thank you. Yeah, I have to say that as much as my raising and much of my environment back there as it is anything, and I got to pay homage to that every chance that I can get. And we just have such a good culture. Like, you run on this event here recently and got to meet a lot of Wendell Berry fans.
Yes,
And
sir.
Wendell Berry was a Kentucky poet laureate for, I forget if it was just 1 year or several years, but he's very prolific writer, writes poems, essays, for those who don't know. and his written works are just they're magnificent.
Right.
And
Wendell Berry is actually one of America's sort of uh, curiously unknown but titanic cultural exports. Like people all over the world know Wendell Berry.
oh, absolutely. And he writes a lot on a good amount of you know losing our identity to this technological stuff. He doesn't have a phone in his house as best as I can recall, or a computer. Maybe he has a phone, but no computer, no fax machine. He lives on a farm in Kentucky that he works the land with a horse team.
What
Um,
part? Wait, where is he relative to you?
so I believe he's in Henry County, which is kind of along the drag there, just south of I-71, in between Cincinnati and Louisville. So kind of there, just maybe south of Carrollton, kind of in between Frankfort, Kentucky, and Carrollton, Kentucky, there along a river. And his stories are just something you can get sucked into, and it's really nice to think about that community. And he writes about this fictional community, Port William, and I just love getting into some of his stories and some of his essays as well. Kind of asking these really good questions about what it means to be a man, and to be a person, and to this change that our society's been going through, this commercialization of everything. And people don't know where their food comes from, and people aren't being a part of a community. What does it mean to be human? And for a trucker, for a long time, you read that stuff and it kind of makes you want to go park the truck and live out in the woods, right? Kind of makes you want to go out and live in the sticks.
I think there's a certain personality crossover between truckers and the guys that just want to run away into the woods. It seems like there's pretty good Venn diagram there.
Absolutely. So it's not uncommon to run into a trucker who's of two minds. They either love this job, well, maybe they both. They love this job, and at the same time, they go off in the woods and never come back out. And that's myself included. I mean, yeah, if my wife Miranda would be up for it, I'd sell everything and buy some piece of land in northern New York, or live up there by Shagbark Hickory or something like that, right?
I'm sure he would welcome you as a neighbor.
Yeah. So and that's been the great thing about being your friend here for the last 5 years, is just getting to meet all these online personalities that have this great spirit and concern for humanity. But and it's unfortunate that we all get, and you all get, bashed so much by the modern zeitgeist, as it were, that as being negative and being anti-humanist. But the truth is there's a great warmth and care and love in your all's message about community and being human. And that's what it's really all about, is we got to be human to each other and be able to live our lives the way we choose.
Right. Yeah. Well, this is it. Life under the machine, as many put it, seems to close off a lot of avenues for pursuit of community and being human on your own terms. And the further along the machine kind of bumbles itself, people forget about that and they think certain things that the machine does are better for us than doing things old school. And you get the chipping away at various parts of the deal with being a human. And yeah, I'm not exactly a huge fan of that. There's various manifestations of it. The sort of predilection of our governments to be more responsive to the forces of global homogeneity and these sort of huge organizations that nobody votes for but have way more influence on our lives. And this is something I think a lot of the sort of devotees of Wendell Berry are also concerned with, right? Like all them front porch Republic guys who all sort of venerate Berry are also concerned about the same things.
Yeah, it's really, there's not a diverse difference between the two sides they like to let on. I mean, you can talk about semantics and stuff like this, but at the end of the day, it seems to me that it's almost like the sides are getting pitted against each other, and for obvious reasons. Think of Noam Chomsky what you will, but understanding, you know, power is this thing, right? And he's wrote greatly about it over his life, and there's a lot of truth in his observations of how things work.
Sure. Bummer in his old age, he forgot all about it. Many such cases. Naomi Klein from Canada comes to mind. So what is it about the dirt in Kentucky that produces people like, Wendell Berry or Hunter S. Thompson or yourself?
I think Kentucky's just kind of, at one time it was the frontier, right? So you had these big cities like Louisville, and not only just Hunter S. Thompson come out of Louisville, F. Scott Fitzgerald, his book The Great Gatsby was written while he was in Louisville at the was it the Silbach Hotel? It was one of those hotels he would visit often in Louisville, and a lot of his inspiration come from a community there within that for that book. And it was kind of the frontier, was the doorway to the west. Daniel Boone discovered the Cumberland Gap there, got in there, and it was kind of this frontier place. There was a lot of early the Great Revival settled there during the early 1800s throughout the Lexington, Berea, Kentucky area there. And there's something about that, and it's different from Ohio, it's different from Tennessee, and you can feel it. There's definitely a cultural difference in Kentucky versus all their surrounding states. We have a lot of commonalities, but there's something uniquely Kentucky about Kentucky. That's a kind of a only way to put it. It's just a very unique state. You got to just come there and experience it. We're about having a good time, but not too much. We're about our neighbors. We're about so many good things, about how, the Kentucky Derby. I mean, that's like our national anthem, right? We get up there and sing up My Old Kentucky Home. Anywhere I am in the country, I got to watch the Derby. And it's a good thing to do. I think it's a good thing to have. And obviously everybody from their own state is very proud of the state that they come from, and maybe that's all it is. But to me, there's definitely something different. Kentucky's always going to be home one way or the other.
Kentucky Derby. I'm not much of a horse guy, but I remember after being up on the ridge and we were on our way to the Mid-America Truck Show in Louisville earlier this year, you tried to explain horse culture to me, and it seems to be centered in a certain part of Kentucky and lots of horse farms. I've never been around that. It's just not my background. Although I spent a lot of time in Australia, as you know, and as a lot of my listeners know. And there's this institution in Australia called the Melbourne Cup. It's a big old horse racing day, and essentially the whole country shuts down. Everybody gets dressed up, goes to the pub. All the women folk put on dresses and heels and fascinators and fancy hats. And there's this whole thing where Aussie society fixates on this horse race and all the hoopla around it. And I'm guessing the Kentucky Derby is like that, but mostly just for Kentucky. Like I'm not sure how much of a cultural import the Derby has in the rest of the country anymore, or the same sort of nationwide fascination like the Melbourne Cup has in Australia.
Well, I would hazard a guess, if you go to the Melbourne Cup in Australia and talk to the horse owners, their dream is to come to the Kentucky Derby. The Kentucky Derby is the most prestigious international horse race there is. The Queen of England for years raced her own horses in Kentucky. She had a farm in Paris, Kentucky, in Bourbon County, and as do many very prominent and influential people throughout the world. We got princes from Saudi Arabia who come there, business magnates from Europe, from Russia, from from South America, from Australia, from Africa, Egypt. They all come to Kentucky to celebrate the most exciting 2 minutes in sports.
Interesting.
And like you say, it's the same kind of spectacle. And I think it comes from the time before cars, the time before the vehicles. You've got one up there, Saratoga Springs, New York, has got a very storied history with horse races. And there's something to that, right? To that older time that we just go back, and it was the thrill of the race, going out there and placing some wagers on which horse was going to win. And, people would go and look at the horse. Maybe they'd fancy themselves as an astute observer of the horse and go out and look at the figure and look at the bone structure and say, oh, I'm going to bet on this one because he's got this and that. Or you'd have somebody go bet simply because of the name, kind of run with it. Gordilocks. I'm going to go bet on Gordilocks. And, the parties, Derby Fest in Louisville is a whole week long, it's a whole week long event. It kicks off at the first of the week with Thunder over Louisville. It's this humongous fireworks show that's put on. So people are traveling in from everywhere into Kentucky currently, and always have been, from Hollywood stars to like I said, businessmen, heads of state. And it's always been quite a spectacle, as Hunter S. Thompson would put it, decadent and depraved.
Peace be upon him. You mentioned Bourbon County. Another thing that Kentucky is well known for is that particular type of whiskey. Another Australian connection. The Aussies love bourbon. They buy imported Jack Daniels and Jim Beam by the friggin' boatload. Although I don't want to sound like a snob, those two particular brands don't do anything for me. And I think they're actually from Tennessee.
Well, okay, so Jack Daniels is Tennessee sour mash, and Jim Beam is Kentucky bourbon. It's not my favorite bourbon. I'm more of a Woodford Reserve kind of guy. I like anything the Sazerac Company does. And I like a lot of the small distilleries. I'm not sure that our friend Yogi was all that much about the bourbon. I think he had a little bit too much there last year at Louisville, but they're,
yeah. The poor Australians. They've been living on the imported Beam and Jack Daniels for so long. When they come to America and have the real stuff, they can't handle it.
Yeah. So, and you get in there and the different proofs. Oh my gosh. I mean, here a while back, I had this one that's Peerless Distilling there in Louisville, and it was a barrel strength 120 proof. And I took the first sip of that, and I was like, gosh, this is straight up gasoline right here. I had to cut it with something. So I put an ice cube in it. And then, sometimes a bourbon needs that. You just got to kind of go with it and see if this is a good sipping bourbon neat, or is it going to be on the rocks? Do I need to splash it with a little water, or do I just need to go ahead and put this in a cocktail? Because there's definitely different bourbons for different purposes.
Right. And so what is it about Kentucky and the geography specifically that contributes to bourbon rather than, say, having it be a regular old rye whiskey or scotch or whatever?
I think it's the water system in Kentucky. Kentucky's actually got quite a bit of navigable waters in the state, and a lot of rivers, a great basin of water. And most of it comes down through limestone. So it's really pretty good filtered water, even just pumping it from the rivers. And then they just do I don't know. I'm not an expert on the process of making it, but I know I've read the taglines and the brochures, and it seems like the waters that we get where it's filtered through that limestone, it turns out to be pretty good. There's definitely a process to it. And I think it's just one of those things where maybe a young chemist who's coming up and thinking about different ways to make alcohol, Kentucky is the place that you come to do that. And obviously it's growing, and that there's distilleries all over the country now. But Kentucky was first. Kentucky's the most of it. There are something like 8 barrels of bourbon for every individual living in Kentucky on warehouse shelf somewhere. And some of these barrels are being aged for, on average 8 to 9 years. Some are 12, some are 20, some are 23. I've heard that there's some in there that's been barreled up for the last 50, 60 years. If they ever pour that stuff, I mean, you can just imagine.
Ooh, oh man, sounds delicious.
Yeah. And, Eastern Kentucky provides a lot of the hardwood for the white oak that goes into making the barrels. And actually, the white oak is sourced from all over the United States anymore. There's just so much of it, but it's a growing industry. It's continuing to grow. My own hometown, Moorhead, is going to be future home of a new distillery. And as far as I know, it's going to be the furthest east in the state for a distillery of its size. So I'm looking forward to that. And it's just the natural beauty and the geography. And, there's something about it now. And Kentucky's on a growth trajectory for probably the next 20 years that I see, just due to the natural beauty, the tourism, the local access to the logistics network, which we haven't even got into. Kentucky is 8 hours from 2/3 of the population of the United States. So there's a lot of distribution right there in Kentucky. UPS's main hub, their air hub, is at Louisville Airport. Amazon just built their main hub at Cincinnati at CVG there in Hebron, Kentucky, and then FedEx is in Indianapolis. So, it's kind of a triangle there of growth, just for the logistics space, the trucking space, and getting stuff out to people.
Yeah, and Interstate 75 goes through Kentucky, 64. You guys got quite a few roads going through.
Yeah, 64, 75, 71, 24, 69. And then we have the Parkway system, which used to be tolls when I was growing up. And forget when the last toll booth was taken down, but this would include the AA Highway, the Western Kentucky Parkway, the Bluegrass Parkway, the Mountain Parkway. We have a pretty good road network that's been built in there, and it really lifted up the economic conditions of some of the last rural space east of the Mississippi River.
Speaking of Louisville and the Mid-America Truck Show and bourbon and horse racing and all that fun stuff and parties specifically, the folks at the Mid-America Truck Show throw quite a few of them, and I seem to remember we had more than a good time when we went last year or earlier this year.
Buddy, we had the best time, I think. I've been to Matt's several times. I mean, it's just easy to go to because I live so close. But last year was one for the record books, just getting to do all the cool things we got to do, right? We didn't know exactly what to expect. You said I'm going to be your plus one as and getting to go in as a media guy and being the imposter there and getting to hang out in that room and talk to Todd Dills, who I've talked to, but getting to meet him and getting to meet all these other cool people there. And then, of course, getting to meet with our Freightliner friends, right? Who knew that was going to be what that was going to turn into?
This is where Please Advise started, right there.
Yeah. I mean, this is Reed and Mike and Justin there. We're all hanging out, and I remember seeing Reed. We talked a little bit online, but I seen him over there just furiously texting and over there in the corner there in his big tech bro vest, then had that hat on with the Post-it note, "Please advise." And I'm like, who's this guy? It was really cool, though. It was really cool getting to hang out and just starting this. I'm going to call it the group of super friends here that, it's kind of grown into.
It's a cult.
It's a cult. It's a cult. It's a think tank. It's a definite party, and it just keeps snowballing, right? Like every day, it seems like we're getting somebody new and interesting in there. I hate to say it, this Please Advise hat's becoming as much a part of me as it is anybody else, dude. I walk around and it's hilarious because Reed's right. It touches a nerve. And I don't know if he understands. I'm sure he understands it. But, dude, I mean, I go out at home. I'll be walking around in Kroger with the Please Advise hat on, and somebody's chuckling. And I'm like, and it has to be because they're working in the logistics space or they're working in some kind of space and they know exactly what that term means. And in that so many conversations I've had, that's exactly what it means. Please advise, because it's the, I guess the passive aggressive way of saying, give me a freaking answer here right now, dude. I need to know what to do.
Yeah, well, that also touches on the location of some of the problems in the trucking business. Is that there's so many people involved in organizing logistics, oftentimes too many to my mind, and it's sort of, to me, the sort of please advise and please advisory group, it's kind of ironic because in that Discord, these guys are all trying to sort of solve problems and make business flow a little bit better, but that's sort of born within this space of people who are part of the problem because there's not enough direct relationships and not enough trust where you can just like, hey, here's this trucking company, here's this customer, boom. Now there's this whole ecosystem of people on top of it and all asking for advice. You know what I'm saying? Like the hat is, it's all, to my mind, it's making fun of a part of the problem.
Absolutely. And trust is definitely something that's lacking in the industry. I mean, you spend any amount of time in the trucking industry in the wrong companies, and it's very easily to get jaded by the entire industry, right? Because you're getting jerked so much, and sometimes you get to the point where obviously there's times that you're getting lied to and getting jerked around, but then you kind of will develop this mentality that that's just what's going on all the time, right? Well, they took that load off of me because they wanted to give it to one of their special drivers or something like that, or I'm getting the crap loads because I don't complain, whatever it is. There's kind of that environment that happens, and to a driver, the driver's focused on one task, but the office is focused on 100 different drivers. So it's easy for the office to seem like they're just brushing you off but they really are trying to work and get on down the line with it. I was talking to our friend Charles Gracie about this, about restoring the trust between drivers and the office. He's absolutely right. And even I find myself guilty of that sometimes, that line of thinking, and it's mostly because, I've been burnt. I've been burnt plenty of times. One of the jobs I left up being owed $10,000. And, when a lawyer comes up and says, well, that was in this state and it's going to cost you more to go and retrieve that money than, than it's worth, really, it does get to that point where you get a little bit distrustful of people. But it's absolutely true. We need to work to build trust back in the industry because it's getting to a fever pitch most with the double brokering and the fraud within the workplace right now.
Yeah, I have many comments on that. But we'll save that for another show and a different guest, perhaps. We're trying to have fun over here. Yes, sir. So Mid America Truck Show 2024. You going?
Oh yeah, we're going, and looking forward to that. Looking forward to parking next to Taylor Barker and making him look bad. Stealing a little bit of his thunder there with my presence.
Yeah, no, Taylor's great. What a lovely guy. He tries to be friendly to everyone, and he just, a southern neighbor. You're in Kentucky. He's down in Tennessee, correct?
Oh, absolutely. What a guy. He's just been in the industry, quite a bit longer than I have. Just such a force out there, man. He just, we were down at the Future Freight Festival here recently, and being at this after party, and over through the bushes here, Taylor doesn't even have a pass to get in. Here he comes out of the bushes, just like this is the most epic thing I've ever seen in my life. It's the coolest thing. I'm like, holy shit, here comes Taylor Barker walking through the bushes into crashing this party. And here he is. He's just there. Nobody asks him who he is or where he is. He owns that. He just has that presence. Walks in there. He's the man. He's supposed to be there. And I'm sure if somebody asked him why he was there, he'd probably he'd come right back off the cuff with the perfect response because that's who he is. He's just so smooth in his communication of how he handles situations. It's very admirable. And it's very, it shows you how a trucking community can be. I've met so many guys like him who have this certain bit of machismo and coolness about him, how they handle situations. And, he's developed that from years and years of working in this industry and pretty much being handed every shitty situation that he can be and handling it with diligently.
Right. Yeah. No, he certainly has one of those auras around him, like he's he's gonna be like Robert Duvall's character in Apocalypse Now. He's just like walking through all that inbound artillery and like nothing's gonna get him, He just owns the place. Very, very dangerous situation last year where he had that humongous handle of Crown Royal that he kept passing around and unfortunately made the next day somewhat difficult for me. But yeah, no, I'm looking forward to camping out next to you guys. We're gonna have a good thing going out in the parking lot there, I think.
We'll see what happens there. It's definitely going to be an event. Most of the guys from the Discord servers, a lot of guys coming up and bringing their RVs and camping out. Like this one's going to be I feel like this is going to be a different kind of year, and I'm looking pretty good and forward to it. It's going to be fun to actually bring the truck out and maybe have it somewhat clean for that, working on that. Most times I just get in this mode where I'm like, it's just a work truck. And it's in good shape, but it's got a little bit of dirt. I go into a lot of places that are dirty, but I'm going to be working on keeping her a little bit cleaner, maybe even get it polished up this time before I bring it down there and park in the Papa John's lot, as it used to be called.
It's your mobile hobbit hole.
Yeah.
Pretty tall hobbit.
Yeah. 6'4". Some days I really dream about having one of those cool sleeper coffins driving up and down the road, but honestly I would probably feel like I was a sardine at that point, which I don't have nothing against sardines. I love sardines, but I don't want to be one.
Speaking of Papa John's parking lot and all the various characters that are going to show up, infamous online poster Uncle Kevin Kenneth Kanke is going to be there.
Yeah, that's as Reed would put it, it's going to be unhinged. So, it blew my mind to learn that Uncle Kevin was not Uncle Kevin, right? As it were. And we won't go too much into that subject. But a month after Matt's, I'm in the Petro truck stop talking to a legend of his own right, Michael Cooper, a good friend who's been an owner operator truck driver since the 70s. He drove his first truck at 14 years old because he was the big kid on the dock, and the owner said, you can drive a truck, right? And he just got in and drove that truck. They didn't find out until he got back that he didn't have a chauffeur's license. But, that's neither here or there. I'm sitting there talking to Mike, and I look over there, and there he is, the man in the flesh. And I was starstruck. I honestly did not know what to do. I couldn't handle it. For once I was speechless, I guess you could say. I walk over there and, I'm talking to him. I'm like, and, I bombed it because I didn't say, oh, my friend Gord wants to get you on his podcast, but I did luck out and get his phone number on his card there. And that's obviously what's led to the situation where you are now a BFFs with Uncle Kevin.
Oh, he blows my phone up every day. It's a continuous stream of boomer posting, but instead of on Facebook, it's in my text messages.
Well, you know what they say? They say if you want to learn about trucking, you look in the parking lot and find the old graybeard on the back row and talk to him, and he'll call you every day. Well, congratulations, buddy. You got you a graybeard.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, Uncle Kevin. I friend of the show and an online buddy of mine, Bog Beef, the Good Old Boys podcast. He listened to that, and one of his takeaways was that because Uncle Kevin sort of grew up in the 70s on his dad's farm in Wisconsin, and they used to get the produce haulers would show up, and they sort of acted like rock stars. They would have coolers in the truck and drinking beer and smoking weed, and they all dressed up. And there's this takeaway that Bog Beef sort of observed was that all these movies came out about trucking back then, Convoy and Smokey and the Bandit. And truckers don't dress up like movie stars. They didn't dress up like movie stars back then. The movie stars dressed up like truckers. And that's the sort of return we have to get to. And I don't know necessarily that Uncle Kevin dresses like a movie star, but he certainly has a particular aesthetic, and it's consistent. And he don't mind being in front of a camera. And then he makes up all these sort of provocative custom made baseball caps, and then he's got his cowboy hats, and he's always got his chain drive wallet in the front pocket with the big old cross on it, and he's just his own thing, man. He's an enigma.
Yeah, and obviously his provocative hats are going to turn off a certain segment of the population, but being around him for a few minutes, and just like any of those guys, don't let that bluster scare you into them thinking that these are bad people. I guarantee anytime that you were in a car accident or need help on the side of the road, any of these people, whatever side of the spectrum they're on, is going to stop and help you. I mean, at the end of the day, everybody's human. That's what we all need to remember. No matter what taglines we have by our name or what kind of message we're spreading, there's still a whole lot of humanity out here, and diversity of thought needs to be appreciated more. Needs to be something that's celebrated, not chastised.
Amen to that, brother. So speaking of humanity, want to give a little shout out to your wife while you're here.
Yeah. So, my wife, Miranda, is a second grade teacher in a rural county in Eastern Kentucky. So, I have all the fun here and make the money, and she's smarter than me with a master's degree, putting up with a situation that most of us wouldn't want to handle every day, which is raising somebody else's kids in a way, for a part of the day. And she's done it for as long as I've been driving a truck, and she's just a saint. She's a great wife. And, for any truck driver who's out here on the road, having a great partner at home makes it so much easier. It just makes life so much better. And, I love getting to go home, and I love the road, but, getting to go home, she makes it worth. That's why I do what I do at the end of the day. And, it's a blessing to have her and to have the kids I got, my boys. I got 3 boys, two of them are my stepsons, but, Harlan, he's my youngest there. He's mine. And, they're all mine, honestly, in the way I look at it. And just really proud of all of them growing up to be the men that they're turning into right now.
That's good. Well, they certainly got a good old man, even if he might not be around that much when he is. I take it that this sort of expressive energy and positivity you always seem to have translates into fatherhood as well.
Yeah, no, and that's definitely true. I try to translate it into everybody you run into. It's kind of like the old biblical saying, the greatest command is to love the Lord, and the next is to love your neighbor as you love yourself. So, I mean, that's the kind of the way I live my life, is this whole mantra of love. That, and don't take that the wrong way. It's just not, it is kind of a hip, it is kind of a hippie thing. I look around in my truck and I've got stickers they're kind of this good vibe. And I got a little fat Buddha over here, good vibe tribe, always be kind. All you need is love. I really believe all that stuff. I really, really like some of that about the culture of that. And, when you get a bad thing in your head and you want to cuss somebody out, and the other day I was listening on the CB, and this guy was having a real bad day. There was a truck maybe going a little bit slower, and he went on a 5-minute tirade against this other driver, because cussing them up one side down the other. And there's a lot of that out here. There's a lot of frustration. That's because drivers are always being pushed to go harder, pushed to work harder, pushed to get there on time. There's all these schedules. And what really ticks off a driver is when they gets there and learns that he really didn't need to be pushed all that much. It was fine. And that's kind of the industry problem right there, is we get pushed so much. We're always being pushed, yet a lot of times there's no reason for it. If you take and slow down a little bit and enjoy the ride, I think that goes a lot for safety, and it goes a lot for for your mentality and the stress levels of doing this job. And, mindset is definitely where it's at. And, I'm fortunate to have that mindset. It's not something that's natural. It's something that you have to work on every day. You have to get up and look at your situation, and you have to pick out the positives, because if you focus on the negatives every day, you will get down, and you'll get down really quick. And you're alone out here. So you have plenty
It's
of
even
time to
worse.
sit there. You have plenty of time to sit there with all of those thoughts in your head. So, things that I do to get to shake that off when it does, I have to change. You have to change your mentality, your mindset. Get out and take a walk. Lombard's absolutely right. Like that physicality, getting out and just getting that exercise in. And I may never be as hot and fit as Lombard is there at the Orange Theory Fitness down there, working out and running marathons all the time and screaming at the camera about Napoleon. But it's it's one of these things where you got to take life with a little grace, and you got to make small improvements. Develop good habits, and you don't have to do it all in one day. You can take your time, but I just tell people, you got to change your perspective. You got to look at the positive. I remember a long time ago, I was trying to get home, and money was kind of tight that year, and I had a load going out west. Well, the idea was I was supposed to be home in 2 weeks, and so I was going to get out west. I was going to get the load off. I was going to get back home. Well, that trip out west turned into 4 weeks.
Oh boy.
So yeah, I broke down in Wyoming during a snowstorm. I lost the windshield wiper motor, went out on me just west of Rollins. So I limped it on into Rock Springs, was stuck there for 4 days.
Oh man.
I got out of that, got the parts, got partially fixed, made it out through Idaho, blew a tire, and got out to Bend, Oregon to a brewery, delivered. And I was looking at my trailer, and I seen all these little black streaks of oil running down it. And I was just like, huh. And I walked back and looked at the pipes and my stacks. I'm like, huh, there's oil coming out of my stacks. So found the shop there in Portland next to Jubit's. Really great guys. I don't know if they're still up there as Precision Diesels. These just really great guys up there. One of them had actually lived in Kentucky before he moved out to Washington there, and worked over in Oregon. But I was stuck there for 2 weeks waiting for the truck to be basically halfway rebuilt. New camshaft. The camshaft was toast. It looked like the Grand Canyon on there once they got inside there. So luckily I didn't drop a valve or anything like that and toast the motor. I was down. It didn't break me up, but while I was out there, I basically made lemonade out of lemons, and took the opportunity to just explore all over Oregon there in the Northwest, and get out and hike as much as I could. And, it's really what you got to do, is sometimes you just have to take those bad situations and turn them around. And, you're going to spend a little money, and probably going to spend a lot more than you should, but you'll have time later to make that back. You won't have time to get the time back.
No, that's right. As they say, you can't make more time, and we're always running out of it. And you gotta sort of roll with it and make the best of what little time you do have here. I like how oh, all right, the truck's broke down. Let's have a look around where we're at. Be that sort of professional grade tourist. It's about the best you can do sometimes, eh?
Yeah. And, I've had plenty of opportunities to do it, but, at the end of the day, I love this job. I really do. There's things about it that get to you some days. I really would love to see shop performance increase to where it used to be. Felt like you pull in the shop and it wasn't 50-50 whether it actually get fixed or not. Now it feels like it's 50-50. You're working with a skeleton crew at a nice shop that's working banker hours, as to where it used to be just you could almost pull in any major metro area and there was at least a 24-hour shop through the week that would get you right in. And now it's a really challenging environment for a single truck owner operator to run over the road out here versus what it used to be, in my opinion.
The real shortages of really good mechanics.
Yes, there's an absolute good shortage, and a lot of them are retiring, and that's going to be something that happens here in the next, few years. Is there going to be even more retiring? There's going to be more guys coming in who, honestly, let's face it, these newer motors, they're not rebuilding them like they used to be. They're complete replacing components. They're, replacing a one box, a sensor, or something like that. They're not tearing a motor apart like they used to, because motors just used to be simple. I mean, they used to be relatively simple. I've watched one guy back in Kentucky for several times in my life tear down motors completely and put them back together. And you know, it's not an easy job, but it's something that takes a lot of skill and time and learning all that stuff to do it properly. And to me, it seems like we've become this society where you buy a truck and you put 600,000-700,000 miles on it, you throw it away and go buy another one. At least that's how a lot of people have started operating. And
Well,
one of the real,
the trucks today are kind of a reflection of our sort of the supply chains which they serve. They're sort of overly complex, and in their complexity, it causes brittleness, right? I mean, we've seen what happened during COVID and shortages all over the place and supply lines that like go all the way around the world. And the needless complexity is at the end of the day is actually like of net negative benefit in many facets of life, right?
yeah, well, that's my own journey. I started out with this newer equipment, and every time that I'd hit a wall with a piece of equipment, I'd go back and look at things, and I'd simplify. I mean, right now, you know, for those in your audience don't know, my truck is a 2000 model Freightliner Classic with a Cummins M14 in it. You'll ask many people, and it's the best motor that Cummins ever built. And still to this day, I can walk into a Cummins dealership and get parts and get told by the parts and service people that I do not want to get rid of that truck. So I haven't. And I've been in this truck now for 10 years, going a little over 10 years, and I've put over 1 million miles on it. And I am not an expert mechanic, but I can diagnose pretty much anything that's going on with this truck at this point. I know the moment that it starts acting a little bit weird, it's on my mind, and I'm racing in to get it corrected, because that's the only way you keep a good old piece of equipment like this out here. And my mechanical skills have improved over the years, and I look forward to getting a little bit better with them. But that's not what I want to do. When I go home, I want to spend my time with my family, and I have just enough out here to get by and stay profitable.
Right. Yeah, but over and above that, I was sort of thinking as you were explaining all this, man and machine melding together, the machine kind of a very human extension of yourself, and you now have this relationship with it. Like you're a craftsman of sorts, and you sort of have to understand how your tool works and like all of the vagaries of it. Like there's a lot of sort of meaning imbued in the relationship between a man and his truck.
Yeah, there really is. And that's kind of like Hank Good's truck, to circle back there to the beginning of the conversation. If you see this truck, and you can see that he lived a life in that truck. And he was a trucker, but he was not just a truck driver. He's a human, and he lived a very human experience. And that truck was an extension of himself, just as much as Claudette here is an extension of myself. Um, and it's a personal experience. It's like you talk about. It's my home. It's my sacred place, right? And I don't mind as much to share it with people, but there's something about it. I sleep better in this truck than I do at home. I sleep fine at home, but I sleep really well in this truck, especially if I find a nice, quiet parking spot where somebody isn't. Where I'm not worried about somebody backing in and hitting it. And fortunately, knock on wood, that hasn't happened yet. But I'd like to think that that's the way it should be. To me, that's the most economical, ecological thing you can do, is take a truck and keep it running as long as humanly possible, and keep it efficient as humanly possible, because everything on this truck was built, and if I quit driving it tomorrow, who's to say it's not just going to go to another country and keep doing the same thing?
Right. Well, as they say, the most environmentally friendly vehicle or piece of equipment is the one you already own. And the fact you keep that truck going means you're not contributing to the production of another one, which, carbon footprints and all the rest of it. I think it's quite a wise decision to take old equipment that's have got specifically the models and makes of stuff that's got a track record of reliability and just keep using it. I mean, it works. Why go? Well, it's economically and environmentally unsound to just keep buying new stuff all the time.
Yeah, and I'm not going to lie. When I listen to like Chase Barber and what he's doing, I would love to go down that hole if that becomes a viable thing to convert this into some kind of future hybrid electric possibility down the road. I'd be open to something like that, and I think that's the great part about being in America is getting to express your individuality, whatever that might be, and without fear of reprisal. And that's really what it's all about. It's about having this freedom. And that's what I love about the road, is the freedom to get out here and just go about. And, obviously not be an outlaw all the time or anything like that, but, to get out here and live a good life and enjoy this beautiful country.
Yeah, what a great way to end it. I'm in complete agreement about the sort of lifestyle and possibility and sort of freedom afforded a fella out here on the road, making it all happen. Any parting thoughts?
Yeah, sure. So, parting thoughts are, just keep a good journey up. Always have some kind of goal that you're working towards, whatever that might be, whether it's truck related or outside the truck. It doesn't matter what path of life. Get out, meet friends, get new experiences. Don't be afraid to try something different. Obviously, you can follow me anywhere, INDIE Trucker, on all the socials. I'd like to maybe leave everybody with a little song there that that look it up. Little Feat, Willing. It's a really great song. That's my trucking song right there.
Send it to me. I'll grab an MP3 of it and I'll use it as the outro music. I'll stitch it onto the end here a little bit.
Perfect. Yeah, we'll just do that. As always, Gord, it's just always a pleasure to get to talk to you. And I, anybody doesn't know this, I'm always Gord's one of my heroes there, as Taylor would put it. And now he's one of my friends. And bragging on Gord here for a minute. I remember reading that.
Don't make my cheeks any more red.
That article years ago there that I read, and I was like, man, this guy's been everywhere. He's driven road trains and on ice roads. I want to get to know this guy. Well, that's what I'm talking about. You want to do something, get out there and make it happen, manifest it. Now I'm pretty good buddies here with Gord.
We've both grabbed life by the short and curlies and imposed our will upon the roads in our own way. And I've been successful at it. And it's been my pleasure coming across you, sir. You can always park Claudette in my driveway. That's for sure.
I absolutely appreciate it. And thank you for having me today.
Yeah, man. No, and I hope anybody listening to this enjoyed your stories and got some wisdom and found your positive vibes as infectious as I've found them.
As you say, way of the road.
I've been warped by the rain, driven by the snow. I'm drunk and dirty, don't you know? And I'm still willing. And I was out on the road late at night. I seen my pretty Alice in every headlight. Alice, Dallas Alice. And I've been from Tucson to Tucumcari, to Hatchapee to Tonopah, driven every kind of rig that's ever been made, driven on the back road so I wouldn't get weighed. And if you give me weed, white sand wine, and you show me a sign,